say to that, Basil.
I actually agree with all of those points. Not because, and I think, look, this was an important race, and I do.
Zohran is literally a man who libs claiming Obama was, and look at what he's getting. So what's the difference, Law? Skip this shit. These people have 1/10 of your audience. Yo, that's crazy. That's crazy to dookie on MSNBC like that, even though it's true.
We got to talk about the fact that New York is becoming a communist Bolshevik town. It's incredible. I'm sorry. I've lived in New York State.
Communist Bolshevik town. At least these dumb fucks didn't realize.
For 50 years and only recently moved to Connecticut and New York City for 17. I can't believe they've done this. How did we go from Giuliani, Bloomberg, cross over de Blasio and Adams to a socialist who now is very likely to win because anybody who gets the Democratic nomination wins. Now, it's true, some people will organize against him. Some New York business leaders are very scared. Some Jews in New York are very scared that this guy who defended globalized the Intifada recently on a podcast at the Dispatch is their next likely mayor. So they could potentially organize now in a way they didn't before the primary to stop him. But if you had to put money on it, you'd have to put it on this guy becoming the next mayor. What does this say about New York and our country?
Well, a lot. And I'm going to push the envelope a little bit, Megan. So you have to give me, and you can push back at any time. So I think it's very
you're in trouble. I saw you're in trouble with Jessica Tarlov of Fox News on the internet.
Well, yeah, I'm going to say it here on air because I don't hide from my opinions. But yes, and you can push back and disagree, and I'll give all the proper caveats, which of course I believe in. But yes, the socialism part is very important. I mean, he has like some of the dumbest ideas imaginable, which we're going to have city-run grocery stores. Yeah, that works really well in Cuba. Bring back bread lines, right? Mamdani 2025. And obviously he wants to tax the rich. He wants to take more money away from people. All that's super bad. He wants to defund the police. He's on the record saying defund the police. He wants to send social workers instead of cops. But like, we need to also understand, and we have to be very delicate how we talk about this, and I'll give all the proper caveats, right? Not every Muslim is bad. A lot of Muslims are really decent and good people. My primary care doctor is actually Muslim. I've endorsed someone running for office as a Muslim, Zuhdi Jasser here in Arizona. So we all know individually good Muslims. But we also must kind of take pause and say, wait a second. The two financial power centers of the West are obviously London and New York. And are we really going to have two Muslim mayors of the major financial power centers of the West? Like, let's just take a pause and take a step back and like, what does that say and what does that mean? And people say, well, it's irrelevant that he's Muslim. Well, you said it best. He wants to globalize the Intifada. And by the way, that just means globalized terrorism. He is the first mayoral candidate of any significance to say that he supports sanctions of Israel. I want you to understand that. That is America's most Jewish city, New York, and he wants to sanction Israel. And we're not allowed to mention that he's also Muslim. Like, I'm sorry, like that actually matters a lot. And he should be put on the record and ask questions about not just his faith, but also, do you think that it's good that we're continually importing hundreds of thousands of people that don't import our values? And you look at Ilhan Omar. Is Ilhan Omar a good example of someone that has pride and patriotism and gratitude for our country? It's not a good track record so far. And from Mamdani, you're seeing someone that has resentment-driven politics, super bad economics, terrible economics. But dare I also say, a radical cultural orthodoxy that is going to be introduced into America's largest city. One that will not make it a safe place for Jews, not a safe place increasingly, I think, for Western values and potentially Christians. And to say that you are in favor of boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning Israel in America's most Jewish city, and it's just a coincidence that that guy happens to be Muslim, yeah, I think that's complete rubbish. And final point I'll say is this, is that London is a captured city.
Bro, this is literally, I mean, I'm sorry for leaving you guys alone with David Duke, okay? It's an interesting time because...
I don't know if you've been there recently, Megan, but awful. It is a husk of its former self. It is terrible. And I don't like the fact that I go to Piccadilly Square and I see more Arabic than I see English, that I see more stores that are Yemen, Omani, Saudi Arabian. That is a conquered and a captured country. And Mamdani has to run on his own merits. He's his own individual person. But he has not given any indication that he is anything but a radical socialist and someone that is trying to continue the Mohammedan march in the West. Individual Muslims can be great members of American society. We all know them. But in the macro, in the big picture,
this is worse than post 9/11 racism. I think people say worse things about Jewish people. Brother, what? Dog. What's ridiculous here is that my point is you can say this and be Trump's best friend. You can't say this about Jewish people and be Trump's best friend. As a matter of fact, there is a guy who used to say this and still says this about Jewish people. His name is Nick Fuentes. And immediately after Trump went and had dinner with him, which was insane in of itself, very quickly, Trump was like, I don't know who this guy is.
Picture. Are we really benefiting the more that we are importing Islamists into the West? I say no, and I think we should have a lot of caution making a Muslim socialist the mayor of America's largest city. And I know I'm in trouble for saying that, but I'll double down on it because I think that comes with a lot of baggage and a lot of trouble.
The response to not your argument, but your feelings have been espoused by others, including Benny Johnson, who said he tweeted, "New York City in 2001 will never forget." After the World Trade Center, New York City in 2025 elects Muslim jihadist. That's not what you called him. You did not call him this guy a jihadist.
No, I did not, for the record, I never said that. You did not say that. And I like Benny a lot, but I did not say that.
Yeah, but here's how Ryan James Gordowski responded to Benny. He says, it's a low IQ hot take. He says, Mamdani's not a jihadist. Sure, he hates Jews and supports a global movement to kill them because he's okay with the globalize the intifada chants. But he's also...
I'm skipping them reading dumbass, racist-ass tweets. I'm sorry.
A stunning upset and one that could change the political landscape throughout the entire country for years. Democrats are trying to figure out...
Oh, we already watched this.
Senator Bernie Sanders is an independent in Vermont. He endorsed Zohran Mamdani for mayor. In a new op-ed for The Guardian, he asked, quote, will the Democrats learn from Zohran Mamdani's victory? And he joins me now. Senator, what's your reaction to the big upset last night?
Enthusiastic. It was one of the great political victories in modern history. Zohran ran a brilliant campaign. And I think the most significant part of his campaign, and I, Chris, would not compare it to Obama or to Clinton. What Zohran understood is that in order to win, you got to be more than charismatic, and he is. You got to be more than smart, which he is. You got to build a strong grassroots movement around a progressive agenda. He had thousands and thousands of people knocking on doors because they were excited about his message. And his message said, you know what? In a time of unprecedented income and wealth.
I mean, this is so far the most successful Bernie Sanders method of turnout. Not even, I mean, this is it. Like, this was what Bernie unfortunately failed to do in the primaries of the Democratic presidential race. Or winner take all, sorry. But you're right, ranked choice is superior.
Is soaring housing costs. They got to freeze rent at a time when families can't afford decent quality food. He's talking about helping to create publicly funded grocery stores so that kids can get food that's affordable, making buses free. He's giving people a positive agenda, not just going after Trump, but giving something that people can believe in, an analysis which reflects their reality. So I thought it was a great campaign, and I look forward to continue to work with him.
You know, one thing I think is that, I'm curious what you think of this theory. I think one thing that happens in campaigns is people get risk averse the more sort of backing they have, and so they don't want to screw it up. And the more that you're coming from a position of like, no one expects you to win, it does also give you latitude to actually go out and try stuff. Like, even whether that's a new ideas, like we're going to try publicly funded grocery stores. Like, no one else is saying that, but I do think there's an appetite for risk or trying new things that was so palpable in this campaign that seems to me also really important.
But it's not just, he sat up at night, I think. this is, a risky idea, but we'll do it.
Right, no, right.
I think he is prepared, and this is the point. Look, what is the Democratic Party today, Chris? It is, I don't think people can argue with us. It is funded by very wealthy people. It is run by inside the Beltway consultants who really have very little clue about what's going on in the real world. And that is why I think, sadly, Kamala Harris lost an election that she should have won. It is a party which is not going to take on powerful special interests because of fundraising fears. And it certainly has turned its back on working people. And Zohran did all of that. He changed all of that about. And the question is, will the Democratic leadership learn from his campaign? I doubt it. I think they would rather go down with the Titanic than give up the fact that they are captains of the boat. But it doesn't really matter what they think. What Zohran's campaign showed is that people are prepared to stand up and fight for change. We're seeing that in the Fighting Oligarchy talk. We saw it last week. Millions of people came out to the No King rally. People understand that our political and economic system is broken, that the rich get richer and millions of people are struggling to put food on the table. They understand the two parties today are not responding to their needs. They want something different. And I think Zohran touched on that reality.
I think some people may know this part of your bio, but some may not, which is that you were a congressman for Vermont, the at-large. There's one district. You are obviously a U.S. senator. Before that, you were a mayor in Burlington. And I'm curious, you were a socialist mayor. There's not a ton of them. We don't have a really long list of socialist mayors in America. So from one former socialist mayor to a man who may be a socialist mayor, one of the things I think about that job, whatever size municipality you're governing is, you really got to deliver for people. Like, you're not taking votes, right? So people are going to see very tangibly, is this working or not? And I'm curious how you think about what advice you would offer from that perspective, which is very different than being a senator or legislator.
Well, I just spoke to Zohran a little while ago, and I had some thoughts about it's going to be a very hard job. I mean, running any big city in America today with all of the crises that municipalities are facing is just not easy. And he's going to have to think long and hard about how you can run that city in a way that really works well for working people. But what I did as mayor of Burlington, and I was reelected 3 times, taking on Democrats and Republicans, is we focused on the basic issues. I kept property taxes as low as I could. I was conscious of the fact a lot of people can't afford higher taxes. We paved the streets, the sidewalks. We paid attention to working class and low income areas that had been ignored for years. We started an after-school program. We started a child care program. We started a teen center for kids, which people still remember. We built affordable housing, started new ideas, community land trust for housing, which is now being done literally all over the world. It was started in Burlington, Vermont. So your point is we also spoke out on national issues, and we had a foreign policy. People joke, Burlington had a foreign policy. We could do it, but you can't do that unless you are paying attention to the day-to-day needs of working class people. So I remember one guy wrote, somebody said, your mayor is a socialist. What do you think about that? The guy says, I really don't know, but he is getting the streets paved.
Yes, that's exactly. It all starts from there at every level of politics. Senator Bernie Sanders, New York.
Why do they say socialist? I don't think Zohran's looking to give the means of production to the workers. Do you think Zohran has the power to do that as the mayor of New York? No? Okay. Well, now you understand why. It's no different than when people yell at me. They're like, you claim to be a socialist, and yet you are living under a capitalist organization of the economy and thriving, as a matter of fact. It's like, yeah, dude. Wondering why they don't say social democrat? Because he's not. He doesn't self-identify as a social democrat. He self-identifies as a socialist. I advocate for modest social democratic reforms in election cycles. That doesn't mean I'm not a socialist. You know what I mean? Sometimes you got to take what you can take. Take what you can get.
New York City's surprise has Republicans and Democrats nationwide scratching their head and talking all kinds of trash today. New York State Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani, declared victory over Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic primary for mayor. NBC News has not yet called this race, but Cuomo conceded after Mamdani emerged with a commanding lead. Mamdani's apparent win comes after an energized campaign that centered on the cost of living.
Each of us dreams of a New York that is more hopeful and affordable for all. And we have worked hard for our dream.
Republicans like New York Congressman Mike Lawler are already trying to make Mamdani a sort of a poster child, if you will, as a Democratic socialist for the Democratic Party. But as a political analyst and friend of the show, Tim Miller notes, one municipal primary will not make or break the revolution. Save some ammo for 2027. Joining us now is MSNBC political analyst Basil Smikle. He's a professor of practice at the School of Professional Studies at Columbia University. Very important title. And he is the former executive director of the New York State Democratic Party. Welcome, Basil.
Basil, but let's hear yours. What do you think?
Man, listen, this was, so first of all, I think that the signs were there.
Simone Sanders, former Bernie Sanders spokeswoman. Now, and then, of course, later on, Joseph Robinette, spokeswoman, and a major opponent of any sort of modest social change and modest economic change. Let's see what she has to say.
There. Early on in the cycle, he had raised a tremendous amount of money from a large swath of New Yorkers, a lot of diverse New Yorkers. So there were signs that he would have this really good breadth of support throughout the city. But I would tell you, my sort of gut reaction is that he did something that you want campaigns to do, which is create a movement around a candidacy. And that's what he did. He talked about not necessarily being the Democrats being the anti-Trump party, but in addition to being against something, we need to be for something more. And I think that kind of language, that kind of engagement, that energy, he's 20 years younger than me. And I'm not old by any means, at least I don't think I am. And so it just represents a fresh face and a repudiation, I would say, of the Democratic establishment. He's got work to do, no question about it.
After the defeat of Kamala Harris, virtually every single outlet came to me and asked numerous questions to conduct an autopsy on what had taken place. They said, what are some of the things that you warned against that became true? Why do you think the Democratic Party lost? Are you the Joe Rogan of the left? Things like that. And one of the things, or not even one of the things, but a lot of the things that I just mentioned, Zohran Mamdani did. Not listening to my advice, by the way, like he was also organically there. I said, explain to people earnestly and prove to them that you will fight for them. The people want a fighter. The people are sick and tired of business as usual politics. They're sick and tired of these institutions that clearly are not doing right by them. Any guy that is definable by a hand-selected few tangible policy positions that will immediately improve people's economic issues will be able to win every election. Zohran is proof of this. Faced with insurmountable challenges as a brown Muslim socialist going up against, in a closed Democratic primary in a place like New York, going up against a incredibly well-recognized Andrew Cuomo, still defeated him handily. And the reason why he was able to do so was because his message was clear. His message was clear. There were issues in New York, and he was willing to fight for New Yorkers and solve those issues. My advice here isn't even like something new or insane or something people previously hadn't even thought of. My advice is the most basic advice of all time. The problem is Democrats refuse to hear it. Abide by the basic principle of democracy. Represent the interests of your voters, listen to their demands, and advocate to alleviate some of the economic pressures that they experience.
But it's a really big victory for his campaign, and I think for a lot of young young I don't say anti-establishment, but Democrats who were just kind of tired of the establishment Democrats.
Can I just say, Michael Steele, how nice it is to have this conversation with someone who has served as a state party chair and someone who served as a national party chair? Because I am curious your thoughts, Michael, on the extent to which you can really extrapolate out a win like this to national politics.
You can't. You can't. You can't. I'm sorry, people. I appreciate Basil. You know, you're my boy. I love it.
No,
This is not a movement, baby. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. One election, it's a municipal election. And I can tell you that there's a difference between a municipal election and a statewide election and a federal election. Base voters turn out. So having said all that, I don't want to take away from the importance.
Yes, because it's raining right now.
It's not, look, I'm just being realistic because this is how Democrats get themselves in the
into trouble. I understand.
Right?
I understand.
Because let me finish my
turnout was significantly higher in this election than the last mayoral race. New York is so ginormous that even 10% of the voting population is larger than Senate seat races in some states, okay? And yeah, it's a primary. It's a closed primary, which unironically means more for someone like an establishment Democrat candidate. Democrats are very good at stamping out leftist opposition in the primaries. That's all they do. The Democratic Party is positioned to basically avoid a wave of progressive candidates picking up steam around the country. They're much better equipped at doing that than they are at fighting against Republicans. The irony here is, at least the way I see it, I've always maintained the belief that if Bernie somehow was able to make it out the primary, that once the Democratic Party machine turned in favor of Bernard instead of against him, that he would have been able to destroy in the general. For socialists, it's harder to win the primary than it is, given the way that the Democratic Party works. It's harder for socialists and more radical anti-establishment candidates to win the primaries than it is to win generals. That is precisely the reason why. Like even Republicans will make statements like Donald Trump, the most successful Republican in our lifetime. At least now, like the most popular Republican, I would say. I mean, a person who was a movement leader, right? Like a person that redefined American politics single-handedly. A big part of his appeal is that he has a lot of populist sentiment. Things that, dare I say, Republicans under normal circumstances would call socialist and bad. It's true. Trump was always more fearful of Bernie Sanders than any other Democrat. It was a major gift that he had to run against Hillary Clinton.
You raining.
I am raining because you've got to be realistic. Because there's everything else out here that is going on that is inconsistent or not in line with what.
Yeah, he's hitting the don't let this socialism wave take over the Democrats, because if they do, then we'll lose to the Republicans. It's the classic boomer position. Okay? It's the classic kind of conservative or just like straight up conservative boomer position. It's no different than what you heard over and over again from establishment Democrats. It's just extra funny to say he's unelectable, like saying that these ideas are not popular. He's unelectable right after he won an election, you know? And of course, no one ever goes, hey man, Hillary Clinton lost. Hey man, Kamala Harris lost. Doesn't that kind of destroy your argument that conservative Democratic Party, like more conservative approach to try to win elections as a Democrat is an abject failure? But no one ever knew Obama's second name, though. Are you on crack? Hillary Clinton in the primaries in 2007 literally released images of him wearing like a turban to the media to really beef up the idea that he was actually a secret Muslim plant. John McCain famously was asked, like, why are you not saying that Obama is a Muslim Arab? To which John McCain famously replied to, he's not an Arab. He's a good person. which was hilarious. Like he said, you know, if he's an Arab, he's bad. Everybody knew what his fucking middle name was. What are you, crazy? What?
This election is purportedly saying. So I think you need to keep that perspective. I'm not taking away from what happened here. You can build on this. But as I can tell you, as indicated by Congressman Lawler and others.
You're wrong. John McCain said he was a Christian, not a good person. No, he said he's not an Arab. He's a good person. I don't think he said he's Christian. Or I think he might have said he's a decent man or something. I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'm misremembering. It was a long ass time ago, but.
There's some perils ahead if the Democrats.
Oh, he said.
We're scared. We're scared of an Obama presidency, and I'll tell you why. I'm concerned about someone that cohorts with domestic terrorists such as heirs.
I have to tell you, he is a decent person and a person that you do not have to be scared as president of the United States. Now, Now look, I
got to ask you a question. I do not I can't trust Obama. I have read about him, and he's an Arab. He is not. No, ma'am. He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with on fundamental issues.
Literally the exact same opinions, if not worse. God damn, dude.
This campaign is all about. He's not. Thank you.
Aren't prepared to package this win in a way in that it doesn't become an anchor around their collective ankle. So, what do you?
This guy's terrified. He's terrified that socialism might take root in the Democratic Party and they might actually win races, So what you're saying is this too is Iran's fault, right? Yeah, of course, everything is Iran's fault.
I actually agree with all of those points. Not because, and I think, look, this was an important race, and I do.
Zohran is literally a man who libs claiming Obama was, and look at what he's getting. So what's the difference, Law? Skip this shit. These people have a tenth of your audience. Yo, that's crazy. That's crazy to dookie on MSNBC like that, even though it's true. Even though you're literally right. You shouldn't say it. You know what I mean? That's still kind of tough. He said no free clout to MSNBC.
I do think he created a movement around his candidacy. But that's why I made the point that the work doesn't stop there. He didn't get a lot of African-American votes, and that's a problem. That's why, that's one of the first things he's going to have to do is actually go out and engage those communities a lot more than he had before. And you're absolutely right. There is a lot of work that needs to be done in other cities and in other states, especially in the fact that we have a gubernatorial race next year and 2026 and New York Democratic primaries for statewide office. A lot of what happens in New York City dictates how those primaries go. Mm-hmm. So the city is going to pull her to the left. That is Governor Hochul, and that's going to create a lot of attacks from the right. That does not mean that it's impossible to get over that hump. It just means the Democrats have to be prepared for that. But I think what they would say is that they would rather die on their feet than live on their knees. They've got to be for something, and they've got to find a way to kind of capitalize on this moment and say, we did what you expected of us. We supported your incrementalism in the policy making in the past, but we've got to start focusing on what comes next. I think that.
Okay, this is boring. You're right. Oh, here. New intel. We're going to talk about Iran.